Yeah, yeah. And with the charging of the devices, preparing the envelopes, getting them to mail service and all this, how much do you need time, if you can estimate the workload a
Yeah,
bit?
I want to say, oh goodness me, for eight. So it depends on how many computers you have, how many docking stations, those kinds of things. I only have what I'm using my laptop, and I can initialize 7 at a time using a docking station. Um, that's also really nice from Activity. You can just buy any docking station. They use those mini, USB, so you don't have to buy their branded
Hmm.
one. So I bought those off Amazon, but I can do only 7 at a time, and it takes really quickly. But doing that, you know, for 800, I want to say I've probably initialized non-stop for about 2.5 days. you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
okay, that's my life. So that means there's a school run involved quickly, making
Hmm.
food for the kids in between. But I have to set out at least 2.5 days to only initialize the monitors. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, just stupid things like putting the letter into the envelope, and it's also, it takes so much longer than you think. But yeah, I have 4 children who all worked during that time, and my husband as well. I think they learned a lot about data collection.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So some take home messages that it depends on the amount of computers. So maybe
Yeah,
if you have old computers, you could save them, so you can actually do more when you
do
have
more at a
just the
time.
arsenal of laptops, even if they are quite old. They
Yeah,
usually work for
yeah,
initialization, and then that if you can use a generic, just a micro or mini USB,
yeah,
it helps a lot. And you ordered just some from Amazon.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I
So
just ordered
that's
them
that's
off
something
Amazon.
to.
I made the mistake though. We first ordered, because I thought about charging 800 accelerometers in my house. So we bought 20 of those docking stations that can charge, I think, 6 at a time. But
Hmm.
you have to have one if you when you're initializing, and when you are uh, what's it called, downloading.
Hmm.
You have to have one that also has that can be plugged into the computer on one end and into a power socket on the other end. Um, and those didn't have that. They could just go into the power socket. I couldn't have them put them in the computer as well. So there was a bit of a mistake. But then, yeah, I bought one that can do both, and that's what I'm using.
Hmm. So did you end up using just this one, or did you
No, I use
charge
the
with the
others
other
to
one? Yeah,
charge. Yes, the
yeah.
others are always in the house, and all the power sockets that I have sometimes have looks like these Christmas lights all across the house with activities charging.
Yeah, yeah. Now that's interesting, and you start to appreciate your papers more when you know the workload
Yes,
of
what's gone
data
into them.
collection. Yeah, and what would be your hope? How could you see that the workflow could be made better? What would you change if you had a chance to change things?
Yeah, so I think from so I'm actually at the moment busy with the third data collection time point. The survey is live and it's out there, and in 2 weeks' time, I'll be again initializing accelerometers and sending them out. I think the main thing is going to do most of it from Swansea, because there's now students who can do most of the work for me, so it's just doing it on your own is really not an option. So you need a team of people around you. So we're going to do that. And then going forward, when the idea is to continue this study on an annual basis, but we would go back into the schools and do it through schools, for various reasons. But we because this study is supported by WIPIS and Sport Wales, we might be able to use Sport Wales partners who already go in and do the school sports survey yearly. And in that way, same way they can, if we can incorporate this study, then we have people in classrooms while children are completing the survey, handing out monitors. It would make life much easier. Yeah. And I think we could get a much bigger sample size then, especially for the survey. I mean, 800 accelerometers would say the same, but for the survey, we can go much bigger.
Hmm. And do you actually have 800 devices, or do you rotate them?
Yeah, we have 800 devices. This was part of the funding. We bought 800 devices for this specific study, and we've already added to those because we lost quite a few. But yeah, we have 800.
Hmm. Yeah, so quite a big investment for the
Yeah.
project to have
Yes.
800 devices. And would you have any advice for data handling? Like, you download the data, then you need to analyze. Have you learned anything how to make it faster, or
Oh,
lose
goodness,
less
yeah.
data, or so on?
Yeah, I think let me think. Well, for starters, be sure that you keep your raw data files. Don't lose those. So it's always good to have a backup. I mean, this is a very, very basic thing, but it takes so long to download the data from it all. And at one point you realize, oh shucks, everything is still only on that one external hard drive, and just get it onto a backup OneDrive or something. That's really important. Luckily, with GGIR, we can process a lot of files at once, at the same time, so that helps. I'm trying to think. The What is a little bit difficult for me at the moment is I've got two different surveys, because there's, for example, the pack C for primary school children and the pack A for secondary school children. So I always have two sets of Excel sheets, and I want to combine those to put into SPSS or whatever program you use. So that's a bit of a it just takes time. It always takes longer than you think it's going to take. Um, but I think if we could perhaps streamline that in a way, it would really save me time somehow. Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. When you say it always takes longer than what you think, would you say it's double, triple, or 10 times more? What would be
yeah, no,
your take?
I say at least double.
Yeah.
It always takes me longer than I think, and I would say at least double the time. Yeah.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. And you said that with GGIR you can analyze in bulk and do it quite fast, but how long does it take? Like, how long single computer is running for data of 800
yeah, yeah.
devices?
It depends on the processing power of your computer. I used to have a laptop that was specifically bought for data processing at LGMU, and now I can't remember the specific specs, but that one was really, really quick. Whereas now I'm stuck with my just personal laptop. But what I did was I also used my husband's work laptop at the time, and I ran files continuously through GGIR. Probably I want to say for 4 or 5 days. And then I'm talking about, they're running about 100 at a time or something, or 50 at a time, and it runs throughout the night and into the next morning. um, but a good couple of days.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you need to keep keep computers running, and then you cannot maybe use them for something
Yeah,
else at
yeah,
the
it
same
slows them
time. Yeah.
down. I at the time used one of my children's laptops just for work, um, whilst mine was running, because you don't want to use extra. power
Mm. Yeah.
when it's processing in the background. I mean, it can do it, but as I said, that you should probably, well, people who are computer whiz, they would know,
Mm.
what kind of processing power, because I always ran that in the background, continuing my work, and it didn't affect it, and it was definitely much faster. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And how was it? Did you provide feedback to these children, or did you just measure, or did you
yeah.
give
So
feedback?
what we did was, well, for starters, I here or there, I had parents leave me little notes saying that they'd be really interested, or emailing me asking, for those I have sent, their child's details, only the accelerometer details. I felt that I didn't want to share the survey details, mental health and well-being. The children didn't answer those questions thinking my dad and my mom would know. There's a bit of
Mm.
confidentiality that I felt would be breached if I give that to parents. But I did share the activity monitor results with those that asked for it. But also we had a webinar, and I invited all parents to, where we discussed the details of the first lockdown, and we will probably have another one coming, before or in the next couple of months. I'm not exactly sure when, but
Mm.
soon. And also, I'm planning to write a blog post, something like that, that I can share with the parents, just so that they can see the overall results. But if parents wanted specific results for their child, they had to contact me.
Mm. And was this like a decision just based on that it takes too much time, that you don't, as a default, you don't provide feedback for parents or the
Yeah,
children?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I think it was just a time-consuming time sit, problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it wouldn't take time, would you also like to provide feedback also for children, or how would you prefer to do it?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, definitely. If see, I would like to provide feedback to the children. I think, oh, I don't know what's the best method to use for that. They don't want to listen to long-winded, you know, speeches about about them. But if you could put it in a nice, like, dashboard kind of way, or infographic type of way, that would be really handy to give them feedback, and maybe some recommendations, or some ideas for how they can how they can improve their physical activity levels if they need to, why they need to improve it, things like that. That would be really be, yeah, interesting. At the moment, because our study aim is specific to, the effects of lockdown and everything, I wouldn't give feedback, because I don't want to change their behavior necessarily
Mm.
before the next time point. Maybe in future, when this isn't the aim anymore, we might think of aiming to increase, and then that'd be a really helpful tool.
Mm. Yeah. And how was your compliance? How much did you get? You sent 800 devices. How many of them, for example, had data, and how many of that was good data to be used?
Yeah. So the during interestingly, during lockdown, the compliance was not as good as during school the next time point. I think my theory is that it's probably, um, because during lockdown children were bored, and fiddling with it, or just taking it off, whereas
Mm.
in school they might have been, busy and not thinking about the thing. But I can tell you, yes, so from 800 participants during lockdown, I downloaded 749 files.
Mm.
So the rest were excluded, either because they didn't return, or the parent told me the child didn't wear it, he didn't want to wear it, things like that. So 749 files. Of those, 649 had valid data that I could use during in my analysis. In the second time point, again 800 was sent. Of those, it was 734 from the previous round. I had to
Mm.
exclude quite a few because, again, either they said they didn't want to wear it or they'd never sent it back. So of those 800, I downloaded 670 raw files, so a little bit more, but and 630. Yeah, so in the end it was less, so it was less files that I dealt with, but their compliance of wear time per day was higher in
Mm.
school time. I capped it on, it had to be 16 hours per day for it to be a valid day, and that was much higher when they returned to school
Mm.
compared to lockdown,
Yeah.
which was
So
interesting.
so it was a little bit 10 to 20% that you didn't get valid data.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like that.
I think
And
that's pretty
yeah,
normal.
yeah, yeah. And do you have any thinking backwards? Do you have any ways of that you could improve compliance, or do you have any plans to do anything differently?
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, for starters, this time around, I would ask them to, if your child doesn't want to wear it, please send it back as soon as possible, and I can send it like a rolling recruitment to the next, you know, to another one. Because I didn't do that for the first two time points. But if we get a quick return on the ones that, yes, I said I would wear it, but now I'm not, then, we can send that out. And just a week later, it wouldn't make much difference. I think, if we do a little bit of rolling recruitment. So that is my plan for this time around, to hopefully increase that. How to increase the actual hours that they wear it per day, I don't know. One parent has asked me if we give an incentive, if there's an incentive that we can give kids. But yeah, that was not part of the funding, and we definitely don't have extra funds to give children a voucher of some kind, a
Mm.
bribe to wear it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's something to consider. Anything else you would like to add about the practicalities of data collecting that you could share advice?
Um, well, no, nothing else specifically to this study. I can, I can think of some, ideas or tips for just in general from things I've learned during my PhD, if that's okay. Um, so, as I said, during my PhD, that was mainly focused on sedentary behaviors. So, of course, if you use accelerometers, maybe combined with a self-report tool to get that contextual data. One of the things that I definitely would do differently is, so typically I went into schools, and there's always a lot of information that you have to, you know, tell children about, the study protocol, what you expect of them, what they should do and what not, etc. And typically in schools, it was either in a hall or in a classroom where there were both participants and non-participants. So it was a busy setting, and I think a lot of that crucial information didn't really, weren't taken on board, or children just got distracted and bored by listening to me speak so much. So I would definitely recommend doing a short video, a TikTok type video of what to do. And you can almost put that on YouTube and send it also, or send the link to the parents, so the parents can watch it. Because I find always, even though you say 2 or 3 times that this is the aim of the study, we don't want you to change anything, there's still children who go out and think this is their activity week, and and change their
Mm.
behavior as a result of that message not going through. So I think the one thing is definitely to do a video of some kind. Then let me think, something else. During my PhD, I had a little bit. younger, or at least 9 and 10 year olds, and to get that contextual data, I used an app, and the app had different tools, a little bit of questionnaire, write and draw, uh, photo taking, things like that. Whichever method you use, if it's not a validated questionnaire, I find I'm sometimes frustrated by the validated questionnaires, because typically they ask children to recall their behavior of 7 days ago, or over the past week or something like that, and it's really difficult for children to do so accurately. So, but if you have in open-ended free text type of questions that children answer in whatever format, whether you use write and draw, whether you use just writing or speaking or recording voice, whatever, you have to be really, really specific with children, because they would tell you what they want to tell you, whether that was the question or not.
Mm.
I found that I had to get rid of a lot of irrelevant data, and perhaps in hindsight I would have added a non-research question in there, something like, do you want to tell me about your day, or what did you do today? And then once they've told you about, whether it's Victorian Day at school, or we put up the Christmas tree, all the exciting things that happen that had nothing to do with physical activity or sedentary behavior, you can narrow it down. So think about your day when you were sitting or lying down. What did you do? Or when you were running, and
Mm.
to get that specific information you're after, because I had to delve through a lot of irrelevant answers. But you just got to love children. I mean, they would tell you, as I said, what they want to tell you. I had one take a photo of the question was, can you tell me what you did, uh, or can you take a photo of a place where you sat down today, something around that lines, and they could write or record their voice, attach it to the photo to tell me a little bit about their photo. And he took a photo
Mm.
of the back of a ketchup bottle, like a tomato sauce bottle, and he
Yeah.
just said, it says here there are no thickeners. So that's great. That wasn't the question, but he's great.
Yeah, yeah, but I think that's a good point, that thinking from the child's point of view, that you
Mm,
can, of course, maybe you can have kind of a warm-up question where
yeah,
they
exactly.
give the irrelevant information that they want to share. You don't need to analyze that, and then
Yes,
you can go and we should more think about how is it to reply. Not only think that we need this data, but how is the experience of filling this
yes,
kind of thing, how
exactly.
kids want to write. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting. So really interesting project that you have ongoing. What's your future plans?
Yeah, my future plans for this project, or
Also for that, but also in your research career.
yeah, so for this project, as I said, we're busy currently with another data collection time point, and then from next year onwards, we'll do so on an annual basis. Well, not we, because I I won't be there. My postdoc um, is ending at the end of December this year. So I'll be leaving Swansea, and yeah, well, first of all, I'm definitely going to take a nice long vacation, unwind, and think about life, I'm sure. And then after that, I don't know yet. I think I'll start worrying about that middle January next year. But I have this plan in the back of my mind, just to build on my PhD work, and maybe develop an app, that can capture sedentary behavior as well as physical activity, the contextual part of those behaviors, accurately, in the way that we want to capture it, either for or both for researchers using the app, but also maybe for as an intervention tool, or just a tool for children themselves, as you said, where they can give feedback for themselves, and where it can this is not thought out at all, so don't
Mhm.
ask me specific questions. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have the answers for it. It's just something that I've been working on in the back of my mind. But also, wondering, surely it must be possible to link the data from the app with data from an accelerometer, so that we have one output. But yeah, that's just, I'm working on it in the back of my mind, and this is where I'll see where that goes.
Yeah. So if I understood, even you haven't thought it through, but kind of an annotation and context of physical activity, that you can record voice, you can record pictures and so on, that it would be kind of locking the day.
Yeah, I think it depends on the age group. So the pictures and the photos, that was really convenient for the younger age group. I'm more and more worried about older age groups, and children in secondary school and upper secondary school. And see, those typically would have a mobile phone. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, it can be a little short questionnaire, or a daily recording of what they did, to give contextual data together with an accelerometer would be really uh, special, I think.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and sometimes there's this wearable cameras, but the ethics part is really difficult.
The
But
ethics
if you
part,
actually ask children that if you want to share a picture, you can
yeah,
take it, like in the situation, and it's just pulling the phone,
yes,
and then you would
exactly,
have kind of consent for that
yeah,
picture, and
yeah,
then you would have it. So I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. There's, as you say, the ethics is a bit of a nuisance when it comes to that. I did ask, for example, in my PhD, not to take any photos of people, and they still did here or there, and I had to blur faces out, just
Mm.
to I'm not very comfortable with wearable cameras for children, because those wearable
Mm.
cameras that take photos every
Yeah,
number
yeah.
of seconds or so, you don't have consent for the people that on the
Yeah,
playground or
no,
wherever,
those, yeah, those are
but
risky.
yeah,
Yeah,
if it's someone's personal phone and they're taking a photo of, in their home or so, then when you've got consent for that, that's fine.
yeah. So after the Swansea job, you might go for the app development. If you would look for a job, what would be your dream position?
Oh boy. A dream position, I guess, would be to work for myself. But that is, I guess, that's all of everyone's dream position, really. Or if we could, if I could manage to get funding from, from a source like an accelerometer company or so, where that we can work together in building that app, that would be perfect. But yeah, for me, it's always, I'm always trying to juggle the idea of me working full time somewhere, whilst also managing, having 4 kids in the house. And that's just something that my mind struggles to wrap itself around. So this was a really, really convenient and nice postdoc to do, because I could do it remotely from home.
Hmm.
And in a large sense, I think it's great that the pandemic has changed that for us. It's more common now. You don't have to be somewhere in an office at a certain time. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. So before we wrap up, is there anyone, any organization, anyone you want to thank, or you want to advertise anything?
Yeah, well, for starters, I think the most important one is WIPIS, the Welsh Institute of Physical Activity, Health and Sport, because they're funding this project, and without WIPIS, I would be out of a job. So yeah, WIPIS is an institute that was formed about 2 years ago, I think, with the ultimate goal to enhance the health and well-being of society by creating active and physically active population in Wales. And it's amazing they do so by bringing together policymakers with researchers, with practitioners, with the public, and finding, where's the knowledge gaps, where's research questions that needs answering, and then I also want to say answering those questions. I think it's a great concept, because we've got the support and the funding from Sport Wales, so the policy makers essentially, and all work that we do gets fed straight back into Sport Wales. So we feel that the work is really impactful because it's fed right back into government policy, which is great. We have representation from or buy-in from all 8 different universities in Wales. So it's really a collective effort, everyone working together. I think the probably best way to describe what WIPIS does is to give you an example. So any organization or a member of the public, anyone can really approach WIPIS with a question, some or other area that they need support in. And something like recently we've had an expression of interest coming through the website from Welsh Triathlon, and the CEO of Welsh Triathlon during the pandemic and during the lockdowns. She was concerned about their athletes who mostly then went on to these online training platforms, Swift and Peloton. Obviously a good thing, but the gamification of those platforms can be quite the nature of it is quite addictive. So she
Mm.
was worried that they might put themselves at risk for overtraining and injuries and stuff like that. So she approached WIPIS. We quickly got the experts involved who can run this study, and together with Professor McNary and Dr. Richard Metcalf, they put a survey together, with validated questionnaire. Welsh Triathlon distributed it for us to all their members. Came back, we were able to collate the data, analyze the data, and fed it back, straight into Welsh Triathlon. So it's it's work that has a meaningful, immediate, real life solution. You feel it's making an impact. So yeah,
Mm.
I just like to thank WIPIS. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's good. So it has been very, very interesting discussions and really interesting results coming from your studies. So really looking forward to see it's very relevant from the lockdowns, and really good points about data collection, data analysis. So thanks, Liesel, for taking the time for this
Yeah, of
podcast.
course. Thank you so much for having me, Ollie. I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, perfect.